Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to COASTER-net Updates. We've got some news out of West Mifflin, Pennsylvania, where Kennywood has officially made the scratch-off reveals into a contest. Now, this is not new news. We know that.
Yep.
But we, both Danny and I, have scoured this word search.
And we've probably missed some words, but that's okay.
For all of the possible words that we could possibly think that these numbers could match up to. So we've spent a considerable amount of time. And I believe tonight, Danny Miller, that maybe for one of the few times in our history here that we have come together collectively to come up with an answer. that we have the numbers, we have words that match the numbers, and both of us agree that this is probably our best guess. Now, obviously, there could be a lot of stuff involved here. You know, I've been saying throughout this whole process, this is a contest. So I do expect some funny business when it's revealed what the actual numbers and matching words are. I do expect a little funny business because ours kind of match up pretty straightforward, I would say.
Yep.
So I do.
We haven't really gone out there and taken really any of the oddball words that we found in this word search. There were quite a few oddball ones out there. You and I seem to be in agreement that there's words in here that suggest themselves to stats directly, whether it's a speed like a miles per hour or a feet, or like a number of seconds or degrees of something for sure. But then there's other ones that people have found that don't necessarily match up to a number, but could be a hint at what the ride is. Some of the big ones there, wood, steel, suspended, T-Rex is even in there. There's a lot of different ones that maybe lend themselves to not part of the contest, but might suggest clues to what the ride itself actually is.
Well, and I think on that line, we were coming out pretty hard for the Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster, and I think both of us have kind of backed off on that as of late.
For a couple of reasons.
Well, I think the biggest reason that changed my mind, having researched Infinity Coasters and really looking at how they're built, Monster at Adventureland has square footers, and we've already seen footers, inside like that riverbed area.
Yep.
That are not square; they're circular. Now, Schwartz Carnon does have a few circular, like their footers are very different. That might be like the ones we see in the riverbed, but I can't really confirm. You're the engineer. I don't know. Do they look alike? I don't think so.
Well, no. It's hard to tell, really. It's hard to know exactly what's going on there. That's one reason. The other reason, and when I was on my 4th of July trip up to the Pacific Northwest, the reason that I started to back off of Infinity Coaster is the fact that we couldn't find the word drop or drop angle or angle of descent or even like tilt angle. The only thing that I saw, and we haven't been really paying attention to what a lot of other people have said. I'm still looking at the word search to see if, any words jump out at me that I haven't seen in, the last several days here. But nothing that lent itself to the word drop or descent or anything that I could find. The closest thing was lift angle. And I questioned myself, why would you make a big deal of the lift angle and not the drop angle on an Infinity coaster? Because the Infinity and Eurofighter coasters are best known for their beyond vertical drop or close to vertical drops. So it really puzzled me as to why that would not be something on here. So that's when I started to question whether or not we would see an Infinity style coaster. And there's probably somebody laughing at us right now who found the word drop or drop angle or angle of descent somewhere in here and is laughing at us because we didn't find that word anywhere in here.
Well, and I think then the question becomes, well, what type of coaster is this? I know you and Adam found an RMC concept
No,
ride.
that was all Adam. I'm not going to take any credit for that because he was adamant in the car. He said, if this is what they get, he's like I'm gonna remember how we held on to the whole Lake Erie Monster thing.
Yeah.
He was holding firm with this RMC concept that they unveiled a couple years ago. Where it's got the racing and dueling. It was from No Limits. It was made with the Schwarzkopf looper, and it had the solid box beam where it kind of valleys in the middle and has some launches. So he thought that maybe 3 launches. The reason we kind of thought that is we found the word length both forwards and backwards next to each other, and then also we found the word trains both forwards and backwards. So we thought that might have been a hint there. So Adam the Beard Man, if it ends up being some sort of RMC T-Rex concept, which again is another word that most people have found in there. If it ends up being something like that, then give Adam the Beard Man all the credit.
Well, and I backed off of that one. I thought that was a good idea for a time. And then, I've read other places that it's some, maybe an Acer meeting that park officials said, well, it's not going to be these things. And they posted a few pictures. And one of them was the T-Rex from Toy Story. One of them was a raptor from Jurassic Park. So, I kind of backed off that whole RMC thing. Oh, and the other one was a hybrid. They posted a Prius, so it's not going to be a hybrid.
Okay, so they essentially ruled out all 3 RMC types there.
Yeah. So and that's why I backed off of that. So the question becomes, what exactly are we even guessing at here? And I kind of, I mentioned this to you earlier today. And I've seen other people say this, so it's not like this is like a unique idea.
People are probably wondering what the hell we think it is now because we've backed off of the 2 obvious choices here. And we also said, why would you put T-Rex in there and not the word infinity? Because we couldn't find the word infinity. If those were the 2 things that were being, thought about, you would think you would put both of them in there.
And the one word that is in there is suspended. And that leads to me to being an invert. Now, I think a lot of people would jump immediately to a B&M invert, and I don't think that's what this is. I'm going to go out on a limb and say, what about an
go out on a limb?
Yeah. What about an Intamin invert? Because 24 is in there. Now, I don't know if I'm going to use 24 which way, but Intamin does have 24 passenger trains on its inverts.
The 2 complete circuit, the 2 non-launch ones anyway. Volcano is a little different, but the 2 tornado ones, Park de Attracciones Madrid, I think is the one, and Sarkiniemi over there in Finland, I think it is. Those are the 2. They're small, but
I don't know, because like B&M doesn't seem like the right fit there. I don't know, because B&Ms have what, 32 passenger trains most?
Well, nobody thought Holiday World was going to get a B&M either, and then look what happened.
I don't know why I think it's going to be Intamin. I just don't think it's going to be B&M.
But good thing that's not part of the contest, though.
That's not part of the contest. I don't need to know what that is. So anyway, I guess what we're going to do here is we're going to work off the theory that this is an invert of some sort, a suspended coaster.
Yes, and we're saying that because like we said, why would you put T-Rex in there and not Infinity? We think the combatant to the T-Rex because why would you just drop that in there and not drop something else in there? So
maybe it's going to have a T-Rex theme.
Right, maybe that's actually maybe. Well, there you go. Well, and so maybe we're thinking here that so we're gonna kind of go off of the theory that this is going to be some sort of inverted / suspended looping coaster, which is what Intamin calls they call it the suspended catapult coaster, is what they actually call Volcano,
and then the suspended looping coaster.
Yeah, not to be confused with the Vekoma rides of a similar type. So we're going off the theory here that suspended is actually the combatant to the T-Rex in there, just like launches and lift angle are both in there, and then also wood and steel are both in there. T-Rex needs to have some sort of combatant, logic would tell you, and we think suspended is the combatant to the T-Rex, and the T-Rex is the red herring, and suspended is actually the hint at what we're really going to get. So that's the logic we're going to go off of here.
So I think let's go through each of the numbers here, and let's start with 220, which I think is the height, and this would be the tallest invert.
Yes.
So that's a record right there. So that automatically puts it, in a different class.
Yep.
It adds some marketability there. And 220, I can't think of anything else that 220 could be.
No, 220 seems to be, because ride time, when you think about ride time, which is the other one that might stick out, that's 3 minutes and 40 seconds. That's an awfully long ride, even if you were to have a really long coaster. I mean, the Beast is only 4 minutes and 20 seconds, and that's got 2 lift hills and is 7,000 feet. So 3 minutes and 40 seconds is really starting to stretch a ride time for, a suspended or inverted coaster here.
Now, 24, I'm not sold on. 24 could be one of two things.
I agree. This is maybe the one that we have in most doubt based on this logic.
24, I think, could be $1 million that is located in there, or it could be Passengers, which is also in there.
And if it's Intamin, I think that's more. See, here's the thing. There's two trains of thought here. Do you think it's Intamin with the 24 passenger trains, or Banshee costs $24 million? So do you think it's B&M and then 24 is the $1 million? I think it could go either way there, and I'm not sure which one it is. I tend to lean B&M, that this would be $1 million, because they have the much deeper history of the inverted coasters. Intamin only did a few. It's been a very long time since they've done any of them. They've done some of the impulse coasters, but again, it's been quite some time since they've done anything like that. Intamin doesn't have a very big presence here in the United States right now. Wavebreaker, really the only thing in the last 5 years or so. So I tend to lean B&M here, but I get the sense that maybe you're going the other way on that.
But we've seen a lot of track. Well, you know what? I've seen pictures recently of track that people are identifying as the smaller track, not dive coaster, not wing coaster. So could that be going to Kennywood from the Claremont Steel Factory?
It could be. I could be. I think that's definitely a possibility here.
Yeah, that's the one I'm not sure on, but that's the one you got to take a side on. 50. We have found the word lift angle, which I think 50 would still fit there, right?
Yeah, because these newer rides that B&M has been putting out do have steeper lift hills than some of the early 2000s rides. I mean, Banshee has quite a steep lift hill, and in a park like Kennywood, where this log flume area is going to be long but narrow, it seems. So you would maybe want to conserve space as much as possible, especially there had been rumors that maybe they didn't get permission to do a whole lot with the ravine there. So you would want to take up as little space as possible. So having a steep lift hill would be something that you could maybe hang your hat on as something that could happen here. So I think the other thing is we really had a hard time finding anything else of the list of words that we found that 50 could actually be.
Yeah, 50 is a tough one.
It's not inversions. It's length, height. It's not any of those. It's not seconds. That's too short. Airtime was another one. That's too long. I really think that lift angle is really kind of the only thing plausible out of the list of words that we found that this could maybe be.
9, I think we settled on inversions, and that would be an American record.
Yeah.
For inversions,
it would be an inverted / suspended record as well.
Okay. So there you could take it from either way, and there's a reason why we're talking about records too, by the way. So.
Yeah, we're gonna get there, and I think people, we're kind of burying the hatchet there, but I think people see where we're going with this in a minute.
197, we said seconds. That would be the ride time. That would be 3 minutes and 17 seconds.
And we have some logic here.
And if you look at other inverts that are a little bit shorter, I think this is feasible.
Yep. We looked at a ride like Alpengeist, which has a length of 3,800. And we're going to bury the hatchet here because, 4,000 is the length. I think most people, I think that might be the easiest one on here. So if that one's wrong, then I don't know that they'll find 12 people who get this right if 4,000 is not the length of this ride. So assuming 4,000 is the length, I'll look at Alpengeist, which has a length of 3,828. A little bit shorter lengthwise. Height is 195, so comparable to the 220 we have. A duration of 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Top speed of 67 miles per hour. So if we had a height of 220, then you're going to have a speed a little bit faster than this. It's going to spend a little bit more time on the lift hill maybe, but Alpengeist has a shallower lift angle, whereas if you had a steeper lift angle, maybe it doesn't take as long.
Yeah.
So that's certainly a possibility there. Banshee is 4124 with a height of 167 and a duration of 2 minutes and 40 seconds. But Banshee has the steeper lift hill. So if you make that lift hill 60 feet taller, throw in a mid-course brake run.
Exactly. Banshee doesn't have a mid-course.
Right. So, I think that could maybe balance it out. The other one here that I looked at was Montu, which has a length of 3983. So right there, it's got a 3 minute duration flat, and its height is 150. Speed is 60. So if you were to make it taller, put more time on the lift hill, and then speed it up a little bit to get through that track a little bit quicker and throw in a mid-course brake run. I absolutely think with a height of 220 and a length of 4,000, and then again bearing the hatchet, a speed of around 75, I think 197 is a very, very plausible ride time in terms of seconds, which would be 3 minutes, 17 seconds.
The next one is 120, and this is one that caused us a lot of thought. And the best thing I could come up with is 120 would be the height of the words in the word search, the tallest inversion. So tallest inversion was in there. I don't think with a height of 220 that, you could easily have a 0G roll somewhere on there that's 120 feet tall. I don't know if you're going to have a traditional drop into a big loop here either. Maybe they're trying to do something a little bit different, that a lot of the inverts drop into big loop, or drop into like an Immelman, or, I think the tallest inversion could very well be 120 feet. And the idea is I couldn't figure out anything else for 120. So
yeah, this is the one we struggled with the most. And I think when we first found the word tallest invert, because the way that I found this, Adam and I found that we found the word inversion and then also inversions. So then I went back and looked at the two to see if there were any other letters, and then I found the word tallest in front of the one that said inversion. And originally we thought that might be one of the records, like, Infinity Coaster 220, and then 197 is like an inverted top hat for the world's tallest inversion. So there's, tallest infinity, tallest inversion. But we had trouble coming up with some other record, so we thought North American, inversions, but then you're kind of like, okay, North American most inversions, but then tallest inversion, but then 220 isn't really a record, so are you tallest infinity coaster? What does that really mean? We struggled with that one too much, and then again, we got away from the infinity for the reasons we said before. So then we kind of said, well, what if tallest inversion doesn't necessarily mean a record? That's just the ride's tallest inversion. Yeah. Which on the inverts we talked about before, the vertical loops have been roughly 50 feet shorter than the lift hill. So this is a little bit bigger of a delta, but I talked about how if you have a height of 220 and maybe the height overhangs the ravine, but the drop doesn't actually go into the ravine, so that, or maybe it does and it comes back up to a higher a higher point where the land's a little bit higher, so the height of the inversion is only 120, or maybe your drop is only in the 170 range, then you're getting into a range that I think is much more plausible to have the ride's tallest inversion be 120 feet tall. So I think that's the best we came up with. Based on the other stats we have here, 120 is too short for a ride time, I think.
Yeah.
Again, we thought a few weeks ago that 120 would be your drop angle on the Infinity Coaster, but we couldn't find any words that even were close to that. So again, a reason why we got away from that concept. So I think this is the best option based on what we've determined we're getting here.
And then 3 would be records for highest, or the height for the inverted coaster, the speed for the inverted coaster, and then the number of inversions either in North America or the number of inversions on an inverted coaster.
And I think that they would pitch it as so it's not the longest. It's not longer than Banshee. So I think they would pitch it as tallest, fastest inverted coaster, and the most inversions on an inverted coaster.
Yeah.
In the world. Because those would be world records, correct?
Yes.
I think those would actually be world records unless there's some weird inverted coaster overseas where we're not thinking about here. So tallest, fastest inverted coaster in the world, and most inversions on an inverted coaster in the world, I think would be your 3 records.
And then the last 2 we've already kind of mentioned. The 75 would be the speed, 75 miles per hour, and then 4,000 would be the length. So that's...
And those fit right with those 3 big inverted coasters we talked about. Banshee, Montu, Alpengeist, they're right around the same length. And if you were to go a little bit higher than those to the 220, it would be a little bit faster. And those other ones are all in the 60s. Montu, I think, is 60 on the button. Banshee was 68. Alpengeist is 67, something like that. So to add a few feet to the height and to add a little bit of speed. And remember that Banshee's height is only the 160, but it reaches its top speed later in the ride.
Yeah.
So you've got to remember that too. So, I think the 75 and the 4,000 for speed and length definitely fit in with everything else we've kind of set forth here. Based on everything we know, I think we're pretty close here. We couldn't find a number we liked for columns or footers, just because that's not a number that's not a number we normally get from coasters. Number one, so we don't have anything to really compare it to. We used Google Maps to kind of compare against Montu. Montu seems to have like 80 to 85 supports, which would double the number of columns unless you're only counting them once. Either way, the 120 is kind of halfway in between there. The 197 maybe, but I think the seconds is more applicable there, and we have better proof that 197 is a plausible number for seconds as opposed to columns.
Well,
we don't have anything to compare it to for any of those weird ones.
I think given these numbers and given that we're saying it's an invert now, does this make you more or less excited than what we were previously talking about? Because we were talking about a pretty big infinity coaster, something like on like the level of shortest Carnan. Now, for me, I'm a big invert fan. Invert is my favorite style of roller coaster. So for me, I think I'm a little more excited about this. That I love Banshee, and Banshee's like in my top. I think it's like number 11 on my list. But there's parts of Banshee I don't like. I don't like the Batwing. I really dislike the Batwing, actually. But I still really love the rest of the ride. So if we're getting another big B&M invert or even an Intamin invert that does some pretty awesome stuff, that makes me excited. I don't know how excited that makes you, though.
I would be really excited for it. I really do enjoy the inverted coasters. I mean, I really enjoy the hell out of a lot of inverted coasters. I love Banshee just like you do.
Raptor.
I'm a big, well, not Raptor, but I'm a real big fan of both Montu and Alpengeist, which you are not so much on those two. Even Afterburn, I really enjoy, which you think is kind of so. Raptor's a good one. Raptor's good.
The funny part is all those rides you just mentioned are all in my top 50.
Okay.
Except for Alpengeist. Alpengeist is not. Alpengeist is.
Yeah, I mean,
Alpengeist dies on the second half, and I don't like it.
I mean, look, Nemesis. I mean, people know how big of a fan of Nemesis I am now. I mean, I absolutely love inverted coasters. So I would be real excited here. I don't think I'm any more or less excited than I would be for like an infinity coaster like Monster, because a lot of the inverts and Monster kind of rank pretty closely together on my list. So I don't know if I'm any more or less excited. If anything, I might be a little bit more confident in our guess, because again, I can't get off the whole topic of why would you not brag about the drop angle.
Yeah.
Because, and not because we don't have a number, because I think the 120 is a good number for that. We don't have a word that goes with that. And again, there's probably someone laughing at us that found like descent angle or something in here. Fine, whatever. But based on the words that we found and the numbers we had, I think this is the best that we could come up with, and I think it's also the most plausible. People talked about a launch coaster with the launches and possibly having multiple launches. People have been matching that one up. Doesn't that kind of admit that Skyrocket isn't that great? If you're
the launch thing I never got behind, because when people said the SNS air launch, I'm like, it doesn't make sense. You have Skyrocket. That was your last coaster, and I just always felt it did not.
If you were going to do a really big launch coaster, why didn't you do it when you did Skyrocket? That's why I kind of got away from the launch, which is what led us to the lift angle being a number that we wanted to match up. That's where the 50 came in, which I think was good. Then the whole T-Rex thing, I understand that concept. And again, I will give Adam all the credit in the world if that's what they're doing. But if you go back to what we talked about at that one meeting where they kind of ruled that out, now is the park just messing with us? Maybe. And if they are, more credit to them. But we're going off of what we've been told and what we know. We have no reason to think the park is lying to us, right? So, I mean, let's kind of rule that out. So we ruled out the launch coaster, we ruled out a T-Rex, and like we talked about, we ruled out the infinity coaster based on the things that we already talked about. So I think we're in pretty good shape right here.
Now I'll throw one more thing in here. My last no, it can't, because a lot of people threw out the idea of it could be a dive coaster. But then you lose the records, because height, speed at 75, you're tying Valraven. Valraven's 3 feet higher than 220. So you lose the records then, unless that becomes just straight up. 9 inversion seems like a lot for a dive coaster too.
Yeah, so the 9 would have to go somewhere else, which is.
And that's where because people said dive coaster right away too, and I think that eliminates dive coaster. So I think invert really, to me, is the last answer.
Yeah, I think if you go dive coaster, I mean, just to bring up Valraven here quickly.
Like, what about floorless coaster? Could you, does floorless... But why anyone would build a floorless coaster in 2019 is beyond my comprehension.
Yeah, but again, I mean, the dive coaster, that first Immelman is on Valraven is 165 feet tall. So if you're 220, I mean, the speed's 75 miles per hour, so that matches up. It's got 3 inversions, but lift angle 50. I mean, okay, maybe. What does your 9 become? I don't know what your 9 becomes.
I wouldn't even know what it would become. That's the problem. I don't.
You do a 9 across train? Like, why would you do that? Why would you make B&M make a new train when they already have 8 and 10 across? I think you lose. I think you lose that there. The 120, I think, is too short for your tallest inversion at that point.
The only other thing is that you're. I guess we could sit here all night and come up with reasons, and we could throw out, stuff like, oh, it's a Mack, looping coaster. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of things you can come up with, but
the 4 or 5 other things we've heard, I can think of at least one good reason why it's not that based on what we know, and I can find at least one or two numbers on this list that I struggle to find something it matches up with of the list we found. I think we really, the 24 we said could be one of two things based on the manufacturer, but it still fits with either of those. And the 120 being the tallest inversion, I think was a little bit of a struggle, but there's enough logic to say that that could be plausible. I don't think you can do that with any of the other types we've talked about.
And I think ultimately, we've always said you have to go where the facts lead you. And we've done that every single year here. We don't have any inside information or anything like that. And I think it leads us to say invert. So that's our answer. So there you go. So we will, this contest is ending here in a few days. So I don't know what they're going to do next. I don't know if we're going to get, track on site pretty soon, or an announcement or a theme. Hopefully that they continue this so that we can, discuss a little bit more about theme and all that. Cause I think that's the next big question once they reveal maybe what these numbers actually mean. So as always, I am Andy Robarchak from Chicago, Illinois.
I'm Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
Right on, right, Warriors.
See you next time, guys. Good luck.